we've identified you as somebody we'd like to have put in their application material. Would you be willing to do that? Hey, I'm not going to tell anybody no. If they want to see some stuff from me, I'll put it together, throw it in there, and see how it goes. So as I started preparing and making my materials and put it in, I got more and more excited about what the job could entail and the possibilities that exist behind it. So I put those in, and after a little while, I was told, congratulations, you've advanced in the interview process. So the first stage is going to be a phone interview, okay? Well, the timing of that was about as bad as it could possibly have been for me, okay? The Atlantic Sun changed their basketball tournament where they play games at higher seeds almost all the way through. Okay, so I was in charge of the basketball tournaments, men's and women's. Florida Gulf Coast down in Fort Myers, Florida was our #1 seed. So I flew down there and was going to be down there for 2 weeks. So we played a first round game on a Tuesday. I had a phone interview on a Wednesday. Okay, so I'm taking my phone interview from the conference room at FGCU, trying to make sure as few people as new as possible that I'm interviewing for another job. I'm trying to run their basketball tournament. I felt like it was awful. Oh man, God, it was so bad. Obviously it wasn't, but at the time I was like, man, I just didn't do it very well. I didn't do enough research. I didn't know. They asked some really hard questions about some documents that exist on the NCAA website about model Division II conferences and what those look like. Okay, now I had a stack of papers, well, not a stack of papers, I had a stack of documents that would have looked like that if it hadn't been on my iPad, full of resources like that. Okay, that's one of the ones I remember saying, oh, that's good. Yeah, dude, 2 model conference. Yeah, that looks right. Let me look at the facts and figures. Let me learn more about the Gulf South. Let me learn more about the committee. And there were probably 3 different questions about that Division II model document. You know what I said? I said, hey, I saw the document. I took a quick glance at it. You can ask me specific questions, but I can't answer them specifically off the document. No reason to try to make your way through it, right? If you don't know it, you don't know it. You can't just malarkey your way through everything all the time. So just let it go, answer the rest of the questions as good as you can. Try to be as open, and this is math. So I remember calling my wife and going, man, you know, we'll see, it was fine. I'm sure they got better candidates. And it was funny, that next morning, I was sleeping in just a little bit because we were running the tournament. Hey, we'd like for you to come in for an in-person interview. I said, well, I'm at a tournament. Well, we gotta have it. So the next week we have a women's first round basketball game on Tuesday. We've got semifinals on Thursday. I fly to Birmingham on Wednesday morning, or I fly to Atlanta on Wednesday morning to drive to Birmingham for my interview, to drive back to Atlanta, to fly back to Fort Myers. So I'm scrambling through this whole interview process, and it was intimidating. Okay, our selection committee was 2 presidents, an athletic director, and SWA, and they threw some hard questions at us. And it was intimidating, but I went in confidently, and I knew that you know, if they want me, they'll offer it to me. Let's just be mad again. Let's tell them what I think we can do. So I prepared a document for them, and I'm gonna pass it around. There's nothing secret in here. It's probably got a couple handwritten notes and a doodle or 2, but look at it if you want, pass it along if you don't. But that's what I handed out. Again, I didn't use any visual aids because, believe it or not, you know, I've only done 1 or 2 PowerPoints in my life, and somebody else usually creates those for me. So as I started to sit down and do it, I thought, well, I can either look like my 2nd grade daughter trying to do PowerPoint in her computer lab, or I could just wing it without it. So we went without it, used that handout to guide us through. But I did as good as I thought I could do. Remember again calling my wife, hey, I think I did about as good as I can do. If they don't choose me, it's because they had a better candidate, and nobody can get upset if they had a better candidate. So I fly back to Fort Myers. I'm in the basketball arena. They call and they offer the position almost right away. So then you get into the process of figuring out what do you need, how quick, things like that. And then the neat and kind of interesting thing about this is my wife and I didn't see each other face to face throughout the entire process. I was in Fort Myers the whole time. Fort Myers and flying to Birmingham. So we did everything over FaceTime and the telephone as we decided whether we were going to uproot my family, move them from Macon to Birmingham, and take on this huge responsibility. So that'll be something we remember for a long time. A lot of FaceTime conversations trying to figure out what we're going to do. But it was fun. challenge, and negotiations were challenged. There was some things I had not thought about. Again, your question was great. They started asking questions again I hadn't really thought about, about what compensation negotiations might look like. But we got there, and I'm super excited to be here. But that kind of shows you a little bit about what the interview process was like. It was a real challenge. It was a whirlwind for us, and I didn't expect that. I expected them to take their time. You hear about these searches lasting forever. The SEC search won't last that long. They've got their successor already in-house. They may have to go through some processes, but they'll get Greg Sankey put in that commissioner position really fast, I would imagine, unless some coup happens behind the scenes on that. But some of these other athletic directors or commissioner searches, they go on and on and on and on. So that's kind of what I had in mind. So for all this to happen in like 5 or 6 days, really took us aback, but we're excited that it happened like that. So I didn't really go as deep into that as I thought I might, but if anybody got any question about, well, let me add one more thing before I open up for questions. The interview process was unlike anything we did when I was at the ASUN. Okay, it was a documentation, it was hard questions, prepared questions, multiple conversations. When I was interviewing for internships at the ASUN, I was looking for 2 or 3 things. Are you willing to work hard? Do you have a good attitude? And do you have good references? Those 3 things, okay? So how many of those do you control? You control at least 2 of those, right? You control a couple of those. And the third one, the references, you can control as well. As you go through building your network and all that sort of stuff. We give everybody a chance. Yeah. 12:15 or 12:15? Okay, all right. I didn't want to.
You're fine.
That's okay. I didn't want to run over. I know everybody's got different schedules, so no big deal. I just didn't want to take up the time that. But anyway, I go back to the internship thing, and that's going to be helpful for y'all maybe. I'm of the opinion that you can teach people skills, right? I can teach you skills. I can't teach you your attitude. I can't teach you whether you're willing to work hard. I can't teach you whether people can get along with you. Those 3 things are pretty important. We can teach you skills. We can teach you some other things, but those 3 are pretty important when you go through the process. So anybody got any questions about my interview process, or as you start looking for interviews as somebody that's done them, as I've hired people and I've been hired? Yes, ma'am.
When you, the timing of the interview you had, did you let your superiors know?
Yes, from the first day. When the search firm called and requested materials, I went and told my boss right away. That's a great question because a lot of environments don't have that sort of trust.
What if it's the other way though, if you're actively looking for a job, at what point do you recommend? If people are coming to you, want to give you a job, and you're out looking.
Yeah. The question was, if you're out looking for a job, when do you let your superior know? My opinion is how much trust you have with your supervisor. Okay, at the ASUN, I had a ton of trust with Ted. He was a real mentor for me and everything else. I was the commissioner, but I didn't take him to every job that I inquired about since when I thought it might advance far enough that he needed to know or would get a legitimate reference call. Always, every single time, told him. When I was making some phone calls and backdoor stuff to try to figure out, typically left him out. But if I thought it might advance to the point where I might get an interview, even a phone, I typically let him know. My opinion was that it helped more than hurt me. That our environment was completely safe to do that sort of stuff. There was going to be no grudges held for a job. And I was also upfront with him the whole time. I told him what I would look for, what kind of job would make me leave. For me at the ASUN, at that time, I was a chief operating officer and senior associate AD when I left. I let him know that the only thing I would leave for is for me to run my own department or own conference, or a lateral move that would get me closer to the kids' grandparents. That those were the only 2. So he didn't have to worry about anything else. So he knew exactly what kind of position. So if I brought him, it was either going to be a lateral move that got us closer to family, or an opportunity for me to leave my own department. Yes, sir.
When you're hosting interviews, what normally sticks out to you on resumes?
That's a good question. I think resumes, I like them to be clean and I want to see something you've accomplished. So those two things. I don't want a ton of stuff that I have to weed through. I want to be able to quickly see what's organized and something you've accomplished. And it doesn't have to be anything big, you know. Hey, led this group, this sort of research paper, whatever it might be. But that's kind of what I looked for when I was looking for them. And then, you know, I know it's a challenge, but also somebody makes a phone call for you, and it makes a lot of difference. A lot of difference. So having somebody that you can trust to call for you when the opportunity comes up is huge. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Are there like any intern positions at the, like those, like South Conference that you guys have?
We're currently, we're working on building an internship program. Right now, we've got one, we've partnered with Stanford's undergraduate sports administration program and using a local student this semester to help us with some sports information. Next semester, we hope to get some more. But part of the goal long-term will be able to open those up so that everyone knows about it and see what we can do to get some of those going. But they would typically be in one of three positions: sports information, or media relations, that sort of web, social media stuff, compliance, or championships. Those are probably the three positions we look for internships at. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is some of the biggest challenges I faced in the various stages of my career. And I'll do the same thing that I kind of did at the start. I'm going to look at my time at Belmont, which may be more applicable to you guys as you're starting out in your careers, you're looking to start out in your career, my time at the Sun, and then already my time at the Gulf South. So at Belmont, and this will date me, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but the real challenge was transitioning from old sports information to new sports information, okay? You all already know this, but when I was at Belmont, there was no Facebook, there was no social media, okay? We wrote a release on letterhead, printed it on letterhead, took it to the fax machine, stuck it in, dialed the Tennessean, dialed the daily newspaper, dialed each TV, and ran it through 10 times. That's how we got the information out there, okay? So our key thing were to try to pitch stories. That was one of our key deals, and to do stats. Boy, has that ever changed. That's not even a realistic approach to sports information anymore. I mean, you might have some entry-level people that are your staff people, or your entry-level people that are your press release people, but today's successful media relations directors know how to engage on social media, know how to pitch stories, know how to incorporate video, and you can see it all over the place. And I tell you, that's one of the real challenges. You've seen guys and ladies that have been in the sports information business for over 10 years. They've had to make this huge transition in the way they do their job. And I feel like I've done it all right. I was lucky, you know, starting at 22, was able to make some of the changes, but folks that have been in it for a long time, I think that's a real tough deal. But that's a whole different world, the current communications, and how you get that message out. And you all see it. You all live it. You see how the folks at West Georgia do it. You see how the folks at all the other schools you follow do it. And it's a real difference thing. It won't mean much to you all, but to some of the other people in the room, I remember unplugging my phone line from my answering machine and plugging it up into my laptop to dial up to net zero and hear that annoying sound that y'all don't even know, so that I could get on and make sure I didn't go to any web pages with pictures because they would never load as I'm trying to work through it. So the technology change has been unbelievable. Even at my time there, in those 6 years, from 1998 to 2005, there's huge changes in that. You know, for me, another one has been changes in culture and my family status change. Okay? So you go from Belmont to the A-Sun, the culture changes. You know, Belmont was the youngest guy in there. I still knew some of the undergrads. It was Nashville. We had a lot of fun. It was a good time to be there. We played noon ball 3 or 4 days a week with coaches and other administrators. And I moved to the A-Sun, and we're in an office with, at that time, 6 people. I was the youngest one by 15 years. And it was a culture change. You're going to run into some of those, and that was the challenge for me. And I didn't do great at it my first year. You know, I'll be honest, I did not do good. You know, I was disrespectful when I should have been respectful. I didn't listen. I didn't engage. thought I knew a lot more than I did, okay? I've been lucky, a lot of things have come natural to me, but being nice at that time was not one of them. So I'm hopeful that I've worked on some of that. In my family, I've got a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. Okay, my wife and I have been married for 1 year when we moved from Nashville to Macon. She'd lived in Nashville her whole life, except for when she was playing basketball at Rhodes in Memphis. And so I picked her up and moved her. And let me tell you, that doesn't mean a lot to you today, but later on, family changes and things like that really impact how you handle your career. I'm thankful for the opportunity to work in the conference office. I really am. I think it suits my skill set, but even more than that, it really gives me a chance to do some things family-wise that I might not be able to do otherwise on campus. The time and the energy you have to put in on a campus is unbelievable. How hard those folks work and how many hours they put in is really incredible. They deserve so much credit for what they do every day. They deserve a ton of credit. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of hours. You make sacrifices, you work your schedule around it. It's incredible. You know, conference office is a lot more of a 9-to-5 job. You know, you have your phone call, I'm going to Shorter for tonight's ESPN 3 game with West Alabama. I'll be in Indy for a few days, but it's a totally different type of thing. It's almost like a business person's travel, business hours, and I'm really thankful for that opportunity. It's let me be in sports. But changing culture from where you go, and now that I'm at the Gulf South again, I'm still remarkably almost the youngest person in the office, not by as much as it was back then, but still almost the youngest person in the office. They've been working for somebody for, some of them have been working for my predecessor for a decade. So we're trying to figure each other out. And that's not going to happen overnight. We're still working on it. I've been there since May 1st. We're still working on it. Again, we had talked a little bit earlier about the learn to work for so many people. There's so many different personalities. You all that have played, or even, you know how many different personalities teachers have, how many different personalities that coaches have. Coaches on a team, from a head coach and assistant coach's personality is different. And we're dealing with that every day in the conference office. Gaining competency and new skills. That's been one of my challenges. You have to look for those opportunities. Schedule making. Social media. I try to do some social media. Okay? Follow me at William_Wilson. But follow for a follow maybe. Yeah, so I try to do some of that because I think that's where I need to engage because there's coaches like that. I mean, I get retweets from coaches and fans and stuff like that all the time, and we've really hammered on that in the Gulf South office. We weren't doing a good job of that a year ago. Today, we're doing a ton better job, and that credit goes to Michael Stagno and Mike Anderson in my office. They've embraced what I've seen, and they've taken it and run with it. So I give them the credit for that. Earning respect and trust is a challenge, too. That's something you all know. Everybody's got relationships. You know, family, personal, teammate. It's a lot easier to give away the respect and trust than it is to earn it. You can give it away in an instant and really fight hard to get it back. Earning it takes time and investment. Put in the time. Put in the investment. It's going to pay off. You can ask these guys up here, they know who's good to work with and who's not good to work with. People that are not good to work with, opportunities don't come along. It's a little more. Makes your job much harder. Be somebody that's good to work with. You know, just do it. It's all right. It's going to be fun. You don't have to be hard-nosed all the time. There's a time and place for that, but make sure you're earning that trust and respect. Transitions from how we've always done it. That's what I'm dealing with today. This is how we've done it. This is how we've done it. This is how we've done it. Okay, I think that served us great. Let's look at a new way to do it. But, gotta be moderation with that, right? Just because it's my way and I think it's better, doesn't necessarily mean it is. That's where the engage and listen part has to come in. So you have to know where to push. Where am I going to push and say, yes, we're definitely going to do this different? And where am I going to say, okay, this is not how I would do it, but I think let's try it. Let's see how it shakes out. That's something I'm still learning with, and that's a pride issue for me, you know, because they put you in the position, they expect you to do a lot of things, make a lot of changes. So the more that stays the same, the less it looks like you're making changes. Maybe people are critical, but that's a pride and confidence issue on my part. Resource issues will always be a challenge. Whether you decide to work Division I, Division III, high school athletics, resource issues will always be a challenge. There's always a way to spend the next dollar. So you've got to get out there and find it. There's only two ways to find them. Either raise them or you cut budgets. That's it. Those are the only two ways extra dollars come out. And cut budgets is not a good answer very often.